Namaskar. Welcome to Vision of Asia Voice of the Community. I'm Ashok Vyas. This Sunday on ITV Gold, in our special weekly edition of Vision of Asia, we will begin with victory speeches of some of the New Jersey Edison Democratic Organization elections victorious candidates. In this week with Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh on various issues, including the impact of US President's decision that has asked China to close its consulate at Houston. And we'll have an exclusive conversation with Leslie Levis on music and passion. He talked to Aditi Lamba via Skype from India. Gapio hosted virtual Global Indian Physicians COVID-19 Collaborative. We'll have parts of that session. Child Rights and You organized Bike for Cry fundraiser, a report on that, and excerpt from a talk with political commentator Rohit Vyas about US presidential elections. All this coming up right after these short messages. Stay with us. Victory is always sweet, but it becomes sweeter when it is celebrated among those who have helped you reach the zenith of your journey, and that moment sharing of their promises as well as extending heartfelt gratefulness for the community members. Here are some candidates who have stood victorious in New Jersey Edison Democratic Organization elections.
First of all, I want to thank Raja Bhai and ITV for covering this event today. It's so late. It's almost like 10:30, and today was a historic win in Edison with 109 votes, which shows that all the people are united. We all are on the same page. Democrats are ready to take on to this November. And I want to thank all my teammates and all the committee members who came out, during this difficult time and supported the whole team. Thank you very much, all committee members and all the residents who supported us during these difficult times.
Hi, ITV, Gold, and Parikh, Wide World Media. Thank you guys so much. We just had an election for the EDO in Edison, reorganization. This is the first time we had two chairmen that were running from the Indian community as well as representing the whole of Edison. And the party won big, right? In terms of everyone working together, we had a great turnout. We had almost the number of people that were in the committee turn out to the vote. So it was a very big consensus and a huge boost of confidence to everyone that ran. And we won as a whole team. And together, everyone, we won. So even for the other candidates that ran, we congratulate you, and we are all going to work together to make Edison great. Thank you.
John Soltesz, I just want to say thank you to Mahesh. He really brought a team together who's going to unite everybody in Edison and actually get everybody to work on the same page and get everybody together and take Edison to the next level that it needs to go. And I think everyone needs to get behind Mahesh, and he's really going to make sure that everyone works together and actually takes Edison where it needs to be. And bring everyone together, which I think is what the party needs and what everybody needs. So I just want to thank Mahesh for his leadership and everything and the team he's put together, and I think we can do great things, both for the party and for the township that we have here. But thank you very much.
Today's election, the reorganization, was between Mahesh Bhagia and Raj Pandya, two people vying for the Democratic chairman position. Today, I'm being told the final vote count was 109 to 41. Obviously, this party is sticking together with Raj Pandya. This is a point in time where we share together with one another to unite. This is a victory for Democrats, and we look forward to being stronger here in Edison.
How you guys doing? This is Tom White, third vice chair. I want to thank Sharik Ahmad for his years of service. I think he did a great job as chair, and I want to congratulate Mahesh Bhagia for his victory today, a very decisive victory. It shows the parties are going in a great direction and that we're all together. And when the party's together, I feel like we could do great things.
Hi, my name's Sharik Ahmad. I'm the outgoing chairman of the Edison Democratic Organization. I want to congratulate Mahesh Bhagia for winning a resounding victory tonight. As the new incoming chairman of the Edison Democratic Organization, I am positive that his vision is going to continue to build on the successes that we've had the past few years, and I look forward to working with him to continue to elect good Democrats throughout Edison.
Viewers of ITV Gold, I am Dr. Nimesha Shukla. I am a elected committee woman District 34 for Edison Township, and today we had a historic day. This is the first time that Edison Democratic Organization has selected Indian American chairman Mahesh Bhagia, who has had a resounding victory with 109 votes for him out of 150 votes casted. Many congratulations to him.
Again, we are here with the EDO 2020 election for the chairman. It's a great win for Mahesh Bhagia. Congratulations, commendable job pulling the history. It's more than 100 votes here.
Hi everybody, Mayor Tom Lanke here with the newly elected EDO chairman Mahesh Bhagia. I want to congratulate Mahesh on his victory and congratulate all the candidates that won today. Tough times, and it was great that we were able to have the election. I applaud Sharik Ahmad, which I know he's out here somewhere, for having this election and making sure that it was done properly. So I just want to congratulate Mahesh and the rest of, I assume his slate was the one that won, since I know his numbers were good. Congratulate them all, and look forward to the EDO doing great things in the future.
Good evening. This is Richard Brescher, Councilman Edison. I'm very proud of our committee here. Our committee came along, and this is probably one of the biggest victories we've had here in Edison. So this just shows that Edison is truly united here, and we're going to work and we're going to move forward and work with our county brethren.
There have been many important developments last week, which includes closure of Chinese consulate at Houston. There is an announcement of Ram Mandir building to be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on 5th August. And indeed, the saga of Rajasthan politics continues. Dr. Sudhir Parikh, in This Week with Padma Shri, Dr. Sudhir Parikh talks to us about all these issues and much more. Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and I have the pleasure of welcoming someone with whom we will talk about the top stories of last week, Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh in This Week with Padma Shri Dr. Parikh. Welcome, Dr.
Thank you.
We have three main stories for this week. One relates to regional part or one state in particular, another national, and the third one is international. So I'll begin with the international first, since we are sitting here, and today it is a very surprising or strange development that relates to the decision of President Trump, and within 72 hours he has ordered Chinese consulate at Houston should be closed. How do you see this decision and its possible ramifications?
Well, I mean, this is kind of very, very proactive, but strong, and probably is a welcome step by Trump administration, because they found that there is some kind of spying or some kind of diplomatic activities was going on, and therefore they did it. And I think it's rightfully just to make sure that U.S. interest has been protected.
So you're right in saying the charges are there is massive spy operation and influence operation from Chinese side. Initially, also you would recollect President Trump referred to COVID-19 as Chinese virus. Do you think they have some additional information which led to this rather harsh or strong decision?
Well, I mean, when any government, and particularly government like USA, with the government like China, both are economic giants. Economically speaking, and they are giants. So this kind of harsh steps by government of USA or Trump administration cannot be taken lightly. And I'm sure they have more evidence or more reason or more reason to believe that these steps are justified. So I will not second guess, because we do not know full story. We have no privy to whatever government of U.S. government has information from the intelligence services. So I would only just limit my comment that I'm sure it's a wisdom of the government of the day to do this kind of action, which I'm sure it is justifiable action.
Now, there were reports that China is behind spread of COVID-19 virus across the globe. And what we hear is they probably have few more evidence. And again, as you said, we don't know all the details. But let us assume for a second this is so, which of course China is going to deny. But what immediate reaction from China can be anticipated? One would be they will also ask America to close its consulate. Anything else that you can think of?
Well, I mean, it can stop here, or it can escalate beyond this thing. And obviously, when this kind of thing happens, Chinese embassy and USA embassy, diplomatic level, I'm sure they must be talking to each other, and they will be talking to each other.
Now, this also would have some impact on the economic relationship and indeed on the potential growth of economy in both countries if it escalates.
Yeah, if it escalates, then there will be some impact on the economy of both the countries. But I'm sure if they try to resolve this situation with the diplomatic dialogues.
Talking about diplomatic dialogues, and China and India are also not on good terms, and America openly supported India's stand. Overall, the Chinese image all over is not good. In the context of Indo-US relationship, today we have the news, Prime Minister Narendra Modi promising investors from America that now is the best time to invest in India. How do you look at this proactive initiative of Indian Prime Minister for US?
Well, I mean, I agree with the Honorable Prime Minister that this is a great opportunity or great timing of timing to invest in India by any country, including USA, because China is kind of having little stepchild. I mean, world is kind of not very favorable with the China because of the pandemic. And so this is a great opportunity for India to attract the FDI. And I'm sure India will be successful in that because India has all the ingredients what China has to become a manufacturing hub or to become a kind of supply chain for the whole world, you know.
So now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also mentioned that this year, or rather in 2019-20, foreign investment in India was near $74 billion, which was 20% higher than the previous year. What do you think contributed to the increase in foreign direct investment in India? And if I may add, because of the COVID-19 situation, it is likely to be lower than what it was last year. How do you look at it?
No, I think this FDI investment is a long-term thing. It's not short-term thing. So, on the contrary, COVID pandemic helped the foreign investors to invest in India, because right now China is not a very likable or favorable country for world. So India has a kind of advantage, and this is a time where India should take really make sure that investment comes easy, all the red tapes are gone, and becomes kind of easy to invest for outsider. The tax structure should be good, so a lot of reforms has to be. Reform has been suggested, but should be implemented, and then this investment will be jump, and it can double or triple easily.
Now, consider the other idea which was shared by Prime Minister Modi recently, which is self-reliance, Atmanirbharta. How do you see the emphasis on FDI and self-reliance? Can both
Yeah,
of
because
these
what they are
ideas
saying,
coexist?
yeah, right. What Prime Minister is saying, that self-reliance means you have to rely on the products manufactured in India. So that is the same thing. And so if FDI comes, and if they want to manufacture, say, as simple as some medication or drugs, so if Indian pharmaceutical company does that, so not only it's an investment for FDI, a foreign investment in India, also because of it's an Indian company, Indian population also will get the benefit out of it. Suppose if the same vaccine or same medicine is manufactured outside India, then India has a couple of more steps to procure that medicine, and may end up paying probably more price. That's why self-reliance or self-dependence is always a great idea, and FDI and both things is go together. What Prime Minister is saying, that not India invest, foreign companies should invest, the corporates can invest there, and Indian corporation can implement or operate there, and that's why both sides can be win-win.
Talking about win-win, there has been certain promises which BJP made before coming to power. One of them was building of Ram Mandir. And as you are aware, by the order of Supreme Court and the way UP government has worked on it, 5th August is the date when Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be going for the foundation laying ceremony. So the work is finally starting. How do you look at this development?
Well, I think it was overdue, and we are waiting for this Ram Mandir to happen for last almost over 50 years, since early 50s. So I think it's a good start, and should be happen. And that ceremony of Bhumi Pujan, only thing I'm sure the government will make sure that all the rules and regulation of the pandemic will be followed and implemented, and should not be, will not allow any big crowd to gather there. And if they do that, then I think it's a good event, and should start, because we have to start somewhere and sometime, and this is the time to start.
So considering concern that you just raised, the reports are they will only allow 250 selected people to participate, and I'm sure the precautions of social distancing, etc., to some extent they would be observed. I don't know about 100%. But now there is another controversy, or that is a kind of criticism, which is always a part of a secular India, is some people, some intellectuals in India are suggesting that Prime Minister should refrain from being a part of this occasion because it affects the secular nature of India. How do you see this criticism?
I'm not sure, I don't agree with that, because I think Prime Minister has all the rights and all the discretion of helping all religion, right? And Hinduism is one of the religion. And so if Prime Minister goes there and help to start something which is really symbolism for Hinduism and Hindu people who are waiting for last 50 years to start, that's fine. There's nothing wrong in it.
No, another issue related to Prime Minister's office comes from the Chief Minister of Rajasthan, who has written a letter to Prime Minister bringing to his attention that over ambition of some of the leaders of BJP has resulted into horse trading. And as you are aware about the instability in Rajasthan's political scenario, this also is quite a very rare occasion when a chief minister would write to Prime Minister. What is your response or your feeling about this letter written by Chief Minister of Rajasthan Ashok Gehlot to Prime Minister Modi?
Well, I mean, Chief Minister is kind of airing his concern about horse trading, but again, we don't have any real proof of horse trading here. And so this is probably political posturing rather than reality. And so I'm not sure how important it is.
It becomes important in the context that this Friday, High Court in Rajasthan is going to decide about the case against Sachin Pilot, the other Deputy Chief Minister, who is no more Deputy Chief Minister and he is no more Pradesh Congress Adhyaksh also. But moving towards the concluding part of our conversation today, in terms of the way things are in India with COVID-19, looks like it is increasing. And compare that with tri-state area or America, how do you see when will we as a world community are likely to be going beyond this COVID challenge?
Well, I mean, COVID virus is going to stay with us for at least next foreseeable future. But again, one should not, stagnate day-to-day life. As I always say, that be smart and be safe, and go out and do as much as you can do without being feared by COVID virus. And as long as you take the precautions in the public, stay away from the people, fair distance of the 6 feet or more, and don't attend any crowded events, I think one does not need to worry about or concern about COVID, because it's not going to go away. There's no deadline for that. That okay, on so and so date, September 1st or October 1st, is going to go away. So just you have to live with the kind of altered normal life, and that's the way it is. And eventually, everything will kind of becomes normal.
And your concluding remarks from today's show?
Well, I think again, same thing. The COVID is really going to be with us, but we have a lot of hopes for treatment of the COVID as well as the vaccination of the COVID, and we think with the good resources, reliable resources, medical resources, I know that vaccine, at least 1 or 2 vaccine will be in the market by end of this year or before end of this year. And so that's a good hope and good news. So let's hope for that. And again, we'll see you next week. Please join us. God bless America. God bless India. Goodbye. Good night.
Singer and music composer Leslie Lewis has been a part of an important Colonial Cousins group. In his own right, he is not only a singer but a composer and a creative, compassionate being. He talked to Aditi Lamba via Skype and shared some of the valuable insight on music and our world. Here are some highlights.
India is obviously, suffering from COVID-19 ramifications just like the United States is. There's a lot that's happening in the nation. I know artists are coming together to raise awareness, to do a lot of work for COVID relief. So how has your experience been with COVID-19 relief work? And how have you been during this pandemic?
Well, I have been living just alone by myself, so I've had to do everything from cook to clean to swab the floor to wash vessels to do interviews to perform live. It's quite a thing. But I ended up doing a song. I'm the mascot for IIMUN, which is Indian International Movement to Unite Nations.
Yeah.
And I've been their mascot for 10 years, and they're just 17-year-old kids. There are no adults there.
Oh, wow.
And I've been their mascot for 10 years. So their founder, Rishabh Shah, he called me up and he said, sir, can we compose a song for the COVID thing on behalf of the kids? So the song is called Ek India. It's on the IIMUN web page. And it features all the singers, Shan, Shreya Ghoshal, Benny Dayal, Bhumi Trivedi, Shilpa Rao, Bappi Lahiri, and also a new singer called Kavya Jones. So it's that one song from the kids who are 17-year-olds saying, "Hum sab milke banayenge ek India." So I guess they're the guys who are going to make India because they're going to be around a lot longer than you and me.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think it's so amazing that you are doing projects while we are in a lockdown. And it's so inspiring to see the artist, never stops working and that creative energy always stays. Talking about creativity, I want to take now time to discuss this amazing journey you have had in the industry, in the entire music industry, and just have the audience get to know your own experiences. Sir, you come from, you were born and raised in the industry primarily. Your parents were also creative artists itself. If I was
Yes.
to ask you, what's your earliest memory of music in which you truly connected to? What would you say back in your childhood?
I think because my dad was always crazy about electronics, though he played tabla and he's been a choreographer in Bollywood. So Sholay, Sargam, Dawn, Khe Khe Pan Banaras,
Yes.
all the old songs, Yahoo, Chahe Koi Mujhe Jangli Ka, Evening in Paris. So he's done it all, Intakam, Intiham. So I've been hearing Bollywood music at home as a kid, but because he was crazy about electronics, he had an electric guitar besides the tabla. So things like that just I think got me more excited on that side rather than the more classical zone.
Right.
And sooner or later I started going with him for recordings or going to R.D. Burman's house when they were composing or Kalyanji Anandji or Lakshmikant, and sitting around as a kid and being asked not to disturb them, chalo tum chup baitho, come on, shh, don't disturb us, we're working. But that's how Viju Shah and me, Kalyanji Anandji, Kalyanji Bhai's son, Viju Shah, was also music director. We were both the kids of the parents hanging around while they were working, and we were told not to disturb them and sit quietly. So that's how we got, we were just like the flies on the wall.
Wow. And we're talking about this fusion of music, and that's exactly what your entire music journey has been, is to infuse different kinds of music all together. When you were the king of indie pop, and you still are, and when you created that genre, what sort of went behind that thought process? Because this is the real indie pop genre, not what happened a little bit after that, which became the Hindi pop genre.
Yes.
But the real indie pop genre, why was it so important to sort of introduce that into the mainstream music?
I think, because I loved Jimi Hendrix, or I loved, Simon and Garfunkel, or whatever that might be, which was American music and which was African music and British music.
Wow.
India, all my friends, very few friends really loved what I did because we all spoke English. But the ones who spoke Hindi, they would prefer to listen to Kishore Kumar or Mohammed Rafi or whatever. And that's nothing wrong with that, but that's how it turned out. And I realized that a lot of people in India wouldn't connect with the music primarily because it was in English. So that's how indie pop came about, where I could bring some of the Western pop music, the what do you call it, bubblegum, candy kind of music, which sounds beautiful to your ear, but it started coming in Hindi, and I think that's when the indie pop thing kind of started. So even for me now, I mean, I'm just started on a new musical journey. I've just turned what in India we call senior citizen, so I've just turned 60. And it's great because my new journey, if you notice in my past, I have always done music for other artists. I've always created other artists and their music. Except for Colonial Cousins, where it's Hariharan and me. But there is still a Hariharan and me, and there are two of us.
Right.
But I've never done anything for Leslie Lewis, per se, the artist. And I think that's going to happen soon. And you're going to hear a lot of music, which, like I said, I love Jimi Hendrix, I love the Beatles, I love all that stuff. Right. I want to bring it to you in Hindi, but in my way. So I call this new music global Hindi. So the music is global, it's in Hindi, but it's not Indian.
Hello everybody, kahan ho tum? Aankhon mein andhera, har jagah gumsum. Tum daro na corona se, saath milkar aage badhe.
You are watching Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community on ITV Gold. Every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, we take pride and joy is conveyed through our presentation of Vision of Asia, our Voice of the Community at 8 p.m. And every Sunday, we have a weekly edition of Vision of Asia at 11 a.m. where we are meeting right now. We appreciate your continued patronage, support and love. A small request. Stay with us. We'll be right back after these short messages. A COVID-19 collaborative session was organized virtually by Gapio, and this global Indian physicians talking to each other about COVID-19 has many important aspects relevant for us. Here are some highlights from that session.
Welcome to Gapio COVID-19 webinar. It's a very successful webinar for last 2 months, and really the physician all over the world has enjoyed this webinar very much. It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce Dr. Pawan Bhattraju. Dr. Pawan Bhattraju is an assistant professor in the Division of the Pulmonary Critical Care and the Sleep Medicine at the University of Washington. Dr. Pawan is part of the group who was pioneer in publishing US COVID-19 cases in New England Journal of Medicine early enough. Dr. Pawan is also co-principal investigator in study where they collected biological specimens from the very ill COVID-19 patients to understand the molecular mechanism of the disease. Let's welcome and hear Dr. Pawan Bhattraju. Welcome, Dr. Raju.
I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation to present. This is particularly exciting because growing up, my father is a surgeon, and so we would attend OPI events often. And so it's exciting to be able to present to this group. I'm going to briefly be talking about the historical precedent of using convalescent plasma and the limited data currently available for this therapy. So on the left, you see a schematic of whole blood, and after centrifugation, plasma is the milky fluid that's found in the blood. This contains immunoglobulins as well as other factors. So the mechanism of action is to think that after someone is recovered from SARS-CoV-2 infection, to collect their plasma and then administer it to patients with COVID-19 infection to prevent or treat the current infection using the neutralizing viral antibodies. Currently, this is FDA approved in the US through an investigational and an emergency IND. Convalescent plasma for the treatment of infectious diseases has been used since the early 20th century and was associated with reduced mortality during the 1918 influenza pandemic, the 2003 SARS-CoV-1, as well as the 2009 influenza H1N1 pandemics. However, most of the published studies of these diseases were case series and retrospective comparisons of treated versus non-treated individuals. Despite this, because of the encouraging results, there's been precedence to use this in COVID-19. There's been a handful of different case series that have been published in COVID-19, but I really want to focus on the largest randomized controlled trial currently available. So this study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in June 2020. The investigators were from China, and the expected sample size for this study was to be greater than 200 patients. However, the investigators said that because of the pandemic was under control in China, they were unable to enroll patients, and so they stopped at 103 patients. Half of the patients were randomized to the convalescent plasma group, and half of the patients were in the control arm. As you can see from the Table 1 demographics, the average age was 70-year-old or older. And as can be seen in most case series of COVID-19, coexisting diseases, especially cardiovascular diseases, were common. One of the things to note about this, in the previous pandemics when convalescent plasma was used, such as SARS-CoV-1 or influenza, it was mostly used in a younger patient population and earlier during hospitalization. In this randomized control trial, each patient had an average symptom duration of 30 days or longer prior to getting enrolled in the study. So it was mostly used later in the disease. It's also important to note that many of these patients received other therapies, everything from antivirals, antibacterials, steroids, as well as antifungals. So it's challenging to know exactly if the results are due to convalescent plasma or from these other therapies. Their primary outcome, so on the left here is the cumulative improvement rate, is the percentage of patients who experienced a 2-point improvement or were discharged alive from the hospital. And so you can, as you can see from these two Kaplan-Meier curves, there is no statistically difference between the placebo group versus the convalescent plasma group. And then I just want to end by saying there's over 26 randomized control trials currently underway in, if you look at clinicaltrials.gov. And so I think there's going to be a lot more that's coming out about the use of this therapy.
It is important to be helpful wherever we can, and Indian American community has always been active and proactive in addressing important issues, which includes help for underprivileged children. CRY is always dedicated, consistently focused on this issue, and in order to mobilize community members, creative ideas come and are executed. Recently, CRY organized Child Rights and You Bike for CRY at important landmark New York location. Here we have highlights from that event.
I'm Patrick Bacco. I'm the Director of Fundraising with CRY America. CRY stands for Child Rights and You, and we've been in India for 40 years and here in the United States for 17 years. I'm the Director of Fundraising, and we need to raise money to support our more than 20 projects in India making a difference in the lives of children. This is our second National Bike for CRY event. We're here in beautiful Central Park, New York City. We also have Bike for CRY events in New Jersey today, Boston, Houston, San Diego, Orange County, California, and Seattle, Washington. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for all the riders for participating today, our sponsors, our donors, And please visit our website, america.cry.org, where you can make a contribution so we can continue to help children in need.
So today's event, of course, is we're at the iconic Central Park in New York City, and this is our second Bike for Cry event by both New York City and New Jersey group. It's one thing that we're promoting awareness about children's rights and youth, and I highly encourage you guys to go on the website, look at the different projects that we're working on, and of course volunteer, reach out to either through Instagram or our Facebook. There's people who definitely will welcome you and tell you the great work we're doing. Of course, due to COVID, our events have been slashed into half, so we definitely need your help in donation. If not, reach out to help us spread this awareness for what CRY is. And of course, CRY is all about making sure every child gets the basic need that at the end of the day I didn't have to ask for, and I'm privileged enough to be in New York City in front of Central Park. So I hope one day we can support those kids in India and of course in America that think that water, shelter, child marriage and all those things they need help with. We should be the one that we feel privileged to be here and helping them out at the end of the day. And thanks to Patrick for this great idea during COVID and maintaining this 6 feet distance and all the protocols that we need to maintain and spread the awareness. So please spread the news and tell people to support CRY at the end of the day. Thank you and have a nice day. And to New York City.
Hi everybody, my name is Ekta Verma. This is my first time to come and support CRY. I'm very excited to learn about all the great things they're doing to protect children's rights in India. I really encourage you all to help and support us to raise more funds so that we can provide them to children in India who really need our help. If not, you can still come and support our marketing events. You can spread a word around. You can spread awareness around in the world for helping children in India and America. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah here in New York supporting Cry for America. We're here on this amazing day biking in Central Park, and I'm super excited to be part of this organization to provide kids food and new opportunities to be able to go on and live their best lives. We'd love to get any kind of support from you guys, whether it be following our social media profiles, donating, or also organizing bike rides and fundraisers like this. So please get involved and thanks so much.
cryamerica.org हमारे व्यूअर्स आके हमारी क्राई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के बारे में अवेयरनेस स्प्रेड कर सकते हैं और लोगों को बता सकते हैं जो भी हम काम कर रहे हैं चिल्ड्रन राइट प्रोटेक्शन के लिए सो दैट वी गेट मोर सपोर्ट और लोग आए हमारा समर्थन करें और हमारे और फंड्स हम ताकि रेज कर सके सो दैट वी कैन हेल्प चिल्ड्रन इन इंडिया।
और ये हर जगह है पूरे यूएस में, ह्यूस्टन, सियाटल, Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh, even Dallas, California, all the places. So you can search us on Facebook, Cry America Facebook page है और Cry New York City का Instagram है और दूसरी Cry Instagram has its own.
It's time for the short break. Stay with Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community. We'll be right back.
US presidential election is important for each and everyone, not only those who reside in America, but even the whole world is looking forward to the upcoming US presidential election and how handling of COVID-19 by President Donald J. Trump is going to work in his favor or would take voters away from him. This, as well as other issues, political commentator Rohit Vyas from New Jersey talked to Aditi Lamba. Here are some excerpts from that conversation.
Since we spoke about the economy and we spoke about the elections and we spoke about the political aspect to all of these things, a big question that's really, getting into the nation and that's concerning parents nationwide is schools reopening. And this has been a huge debate in the last 2 weeks. We still don't know where the final decision is going to go. But could you try to explain why this has become such a big political issue? And is it really safe to open schools while we're in a pandemic?
Yeah, it's in one word, in my opinion, it's not safe to open schools in a pandemic. However, you cannot remain shut forever. And schools are extremely important for the development of young people, of children. First of all, their own development, they need to socially interact. And I think we can do so safely. It's going to depend upon each county again, each city, each state, and I think the governors will have to adjudicate that situation and leave it to the individual school jurisdictions to decide what to do. The other problem is you got working, career parents. You got couples that are working, and they're handicapped by having to stay home to look after their kids because they can't find the daycare because the kids are not going to school, and daycare cannot handle so many children at the same time, and so therefore you have to have the schools open. But most important, it's extremely important for the development of children. We've had the schools now shut for many months. They've got to reopen. I think they're going to have to do it in a staggered fashion. They're going to have to do it very, very carefully, assess the pandemic situation in every locality of the country, and then open up the school districts. The school superintendents, along with the local administrators, will have to take those decisions. Among the things they're going to have to do is to ensure that students wear masks. Not an easy task. How do you get kids to adhere to mask wearing? I have no idea if kids are even going to listen to you. They're all going to rip those things off, and they're going to be doing what kids do, which is be close to each other. They're going to have, plus then you have the situation where younger people passing on the virus to each other may not be as dangerous. It is dangerous, but may not be as dangerous as it is to passing it on to teachers. And you'll have many teachers who are at a susceptible age, in their later years, in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Yeah. They can succumb to the virus if it gets to them. It's a tough decision. If I were an administrator, I would check out the pandemic numbers. I'd like to see most people within my community tested. And if I know that most people are free of the virus, I'd open my school and say, okay, we can open it. We're going to have a staggered class system. So if you have a class of, say, 30 students, right, I would have a class of 15 come in on one day, on a Monday. On a Tuesday, I'd have the next class of 15, all right? In between, we're going to have to disinfect the classrooms, obviously, overnight and the rest of it. But if we have a staggered system where kids are not sitting too close to each other, strictly supervised by a teacher who's wearing a mask, kids will have to wear the mask. If the kids don't wear the masks, at least the teacher is wearing the mask, keeping the kids apart. I think we can be somewhat safe. But this is all going to depend upon the assessments, upon medical assessments, upon medical advice locally. Yeah. So it basically comes down to the roots, to the grassroots. Wherever the schools are located, these decisions are going to have to be taken. But yes, in a sentence, it's going to be very important to open schools. How we do it is the question. They talk about remote learning. Remote learning, a lot of kids are, it's been discovered, a lot of kids have shown absolutely no attention. They've all displayed ADD, attention deficit disorder, and that's because they can't stick before a screen, in front of a screen for too long. Isn't that ironic? When it comes to computer games, they can stick on for hours. When it comes to studying, they don't like the computer screens as much. But that's what they've discovered, and so the classroom is going to be necessary. Another solution, I think, can be to have outdoor classrooms. If we have some outdoor classrooms, especially when the weather is okay, and then the southern states, once they recover, their weather is much better throughout the year, they have an advantage of being able to administer outdoor classrooms. So that can work.
I would love for you to give one last message to our audience today.
Well, hang in there. Like I said the last time, hang in there. Let's all be optimistic. We're going through tough times. It's very difficult times. One of the things I'd like to emphasize, as does Dr. Fauci and all the medical experts, Dr. Ashish Jha, who you've had on your show before, and a lot of people that you've had on, they're all saying the same thing. Please, if you can, wear the mask. If you don't have any health issues where you cannot wear a mask, we've been told repeatedly that's the safest thing to do. And so I'd encourage every member of my community, go ahead, wear that mask, because it's not just the other person who could infect you. You could be carrying the virus and infect someone else. We're all in this together. Let's care for each other. And yes, come November, go out there, please vote. If you don't go out to vote and it's not possible, send in your ballot by mail and do vote. And don't listen to the rumors of ballots being tampered with, etc. It's not true. The integrity of the U.S. voting system is unmatched anywhere in the world. So do vote. It's extremely important you exercise that franchise.
Time to say goodbye from today's Vision of Asia Voice of the Community. But before that, let me remind you, we have a very vibrant Facebook page of ITV Gold. Be friends with us there and also subscribe YouTube channel of ITV Gold. Keep writing to us about events and your feedback, events@itvgold.com. With that, time to say goodbye from today's Vision of Asia, a voice of the community. And also gently remember with you that COVID-19 is still not far away. We need to observe all that is important, including wearing masks and maintaining social distance. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you for being with us. This is Ashok Vyas.